Hi, Darren. How you doing today?
Hi.
All right, all right. So thank you for participating in this interview. Um, what I hope to do is just ask you a few questions about yourself, your process, and how you got to this point in your career. Ask you a few questions about your particular career path, what brought you here, etc., and just serve as an informative sort of discussion for some of the students over at Morehouse College. Does that work for you?
That's brilliant. And I'm
Awesome.
honored that you chose me, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So this should go for about 15 minutes. If at any point anything pops up or you need to jump off, please just let me know and we can get started after that.
Sounds
So
good.
once again, thanks for joining. Could you tell me your name and where you're from?
Sure. So my name is Darren Eastman. Actually, my full name is Darren Marcus Rory Eastman because my parents thought it was fun to give me four names versus three names versus just one. And so it always causes problems on different applications because the names always change. But anyway, Darren Marcus Rory Eastman is my full name. I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, which is one of the islands in the Caribbean. It's an industrial island. It's born there a long, long time ago. I moved to the United States after high school and junior college, which for folks that are in the UK side of things, it's A level. So that's kind of where I'm from at a high level.
Nice, nice. So how did you first hear about software development?
I don't even remember when I first heard the term software development, to be honest. Actually, I think when I was on my way to college at University of Texas in Austin many, many moons ago, I was going to go in, and actually I went in with the intent to be in computer science. So back then it was just all around computer science. I always knew I wanted to do computer science. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. Before I went to university, I thought I wanted to become a lawyer, but then being from the Caribbean and being part of that cohort, especially the University of Texas back in those days, all of the Caribbean students will focus on like, no, if you go to the University of Texas, you have to be in engineering. That's where that's where you're gonna. I'm not gonna lie. That's they basically would all sit together on the quad, and they're like, no, you have to be engineering. That's where the money is, either petroleum, electrical, mechanical, or computer science is a new thing, or computer engineering. That sounds like yeah, it makes sense, right? So put law to the side. Otherwise, I would have been a lawyer today. I'm not making. Maybe I'm making any money, and decided to go to computer science. So that's when I first heard the term computer science was within the construct of going, as I became a freshman in college.
Right, right. So what was computer science like at that time for you?
That's a really great question. I didn't know what computer science was. I knew it was going to be interesting. I knew I wanted to kind of figure out programming and all of the things related to computer science. What it was like the first year at the University of Texas was very, very difficult. Being in computer science at the first year at UT, I'm not sure if it's changed now, but back then there were so many kids who wanted to be computer science majors. So that's an entry level computer science undergrad. You go into this classroom with I forget how many. I'm going to make up a number now. It's probably not completely accurate. It's say 100 kids, and you're just like this read out class, and you're getting like programming assignments every day, every week, quizzes, and so it was really, really difficult, especially because it's new, right?
Right.
And back when I was an undergrad in college, we probably had less exposure than kids today in terms of being able to just reach out on the internet and kind of figure out things way before they even get to college. But it was interesting. It was I love being part of that as sort of an undergrad. But what kind of switched for me in terms of what was a great opportunity for me while being that freshman, my first semester there at UT, was that my first job, part-time job on the UT campus, was working in the what we call at the time the Texas Union Micro Center, which was basically the campus computer store. And I just happened to fall into the job because one of my friends worked there. And that particular store was the big, I think this is was accurate. Hopefully, I'm not making up these numbers. But I think at the time, folks would say that it was the store that sold the most Apple computers across the United States. This was
Mm,
before Apple had Apple stores.
right.
And so we were a huge Apple retailer. And I just fell in love with, so my day job was going to class in the morning. Most of my classes try to be in the morning, going to computer science class. In the afternoon, just basically working as a techie at this campus computer store, learning everything about computers, networks, the early internet at the time. We were still dial-up moments, BBSs. And so that's kind of my initial experience in terms of, hey, being a computer science major and parallel kind of being exposed to all things that were
Sure.
happening in the industry, if you will, the nascent, industry
Yeah.
at the time.
And so even let's take us back to when you were a student, right? What was sort of the talk of the town, if you would, about what the future of computer science was going to be for those people who were heading into software development? What were some of the career paths or career trajectories, or even companies that people were like, this is the ideal company to work for?
I thought, that's an interesting question. We were just, maybe we were just not that great students. I don't recall having those great conversations. Honestly, you would go to, for me, and maybe it was just me because I'm an introvert, just go to class, math class or whatever it is, do what I had to do in class, get my homework. But the conversations I was having about career was actually happening at my job on campus. And
Okay.
those conversations were interesting because we were kind of like, it was kind of one of those sort of like lightning kind of things, right? Genie in a bottle. It just happened, it made us happen at one point in time in the universe, the right convergence of events, right? Here you are, you're going to this job, and the folks are figuring out how to set up the first networks. The folks are figuring out how to actually deploy the first worldwide websites to the campus. The folks that help, right? And we were just kind of part of that discussion. We weren't even saying, hey, I want to go work for company A. We
Right.
just knew that we were doing this cool thing and it was fun. And then so you'll be sitting around one day, like I might be sitting here with Sharif one day, and he's my co-worker on the technical support line, helping this humongous campus solve whatever the problems they're trying to solve. And we solve all kinds of problems, right? We'd fix printers, we'd fix Macs, we'd set up networks, right? We'd fix your modems, we do everything, right?
Right.
We'd help like professors. So I remember having a conversation with you one day, and then tomorrow, oh, Sharif got a call to go work at Dell, this hot startup that's like blazing trails in North Austin. Oh, that's cool, right? Oh, he's no longer taking any classes. He's going to go work for Dell. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, Jane just left because she got this great design job, and is she going to finish undergrad? Not sure. So it was like this kind of weird bohemian kind of thing where you're like, you're kind of going to school, and all of a sudden, oh, this person is, oh, they're going to work for Motorola. Oh, that's cool.
Right.
And that was, so we weren't having, I wasn't having good conversations with my computer science peers. The friends that were in petroleum engineering or electrical, they were having more of those like, hey, after I finish my petroleum engineering degree, I'm going to go work for, whomever, like Shell or whatever.
Right.
The folks I was hanging out with, we were just floating in this ether and just like having things happen to us. It's really interesting. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So tell me your first job then. You graduate. What's your first job out of college?
So that's where it gets interesting. So I'm plugging around, having a great time, paying for school, right? Luckily at the time, tuition wasn't as crazy as it is now.
No.
Right? Kind of like floating in and out of like, oh, I'll take some classes here, having more fun working here. And so I did it for quite a few years, trying to like figure out, am I going to finish my CS degree or not, right?
Right.
Kind of like one of those, was I going to be on a 20-year plan? And then after working for a few years, doing that for a couple of years, while kind of like trying to get my act together and kind of like, oh, I need to go finish off these classes to get my degree done here at UT. I think it was the mid-90s. Still hadn't graduated yet. Still was kind of like trying to get my CS stuff straightened out and not like fail my core classes. Right?
Judgment-free zone. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm being completely honest. It's just exactly what happened, right? And so even though I was working at the campus in Princeton for all those years, somewhere along the line, like in mid-90s, just to give you a sense of how old I am, I had my first internship working for Apple. So I left the campus computer store because Apple was like paying us a bunch of money to go work at their help desk or support center that had just opened up in North Austin. So I was like, well, that's cool. They're paying a bunch of cash for us just to tell people how to fix their Macintoshes. So I took that gig. That lasted for about a year while I was still taking classes at UT. That ended. Worked at UT for a little bit, and then all of a sudden, one of my friends was like, "Hey, Motorola is building this new factory, this new fab for the fabrication of the PowerPC chips." At the time, it was mid-90s. Apple, and I'm sure if Steve Jobs had got back yet. I don't think we weren't chatting with Steve. I think he hadn't gotten back yet. Apple was basically using PowerPC chips, and there's a whole debate in the industry versus in terms of PowerPC RISC chips versus CISC chips. But that factory was being built there in Austin to manufacture these PowerPC chips for Apple. So I got a job working in that in what was called BAT1 for Motorola Semiconductor as a network systems engineering geek, as part of this team that was responsible for the networking, the technology infrastructure for this massive manufacturing plant. So we ran the netbooks, we ran the computers, we ran the printers, we ran the factory floor, we ran the mainframes and ran the factory systems. And that was my first kind of job while kind of in college. So I did that for a year. And then one of the friends that I worked with there, he left to go work for Dell. Dell was still in that really like, they had obviously gone IPO, but their stock was like accelerating because it was just before the dot-com boom or bust. So everything was going crazy. And then in I think it was September of '98, one of my friends that had worked with me at back when called me up, said, "I got this great role for you at Dell. We're doing this Y2K thing. You'd be awesome for it." I was like, "Sure, why not?" So I just went over to work for Dell, and that's how I got into Dell. And I worked at Dell for about almost 15, 17 years.
Nice, nice. Some of the kids who watch this are going to have to Google exactly what you're talking about when we talk about that Y2K incident that had the entire tech world in absolute fear.
Absolutely,
everything was going to come to an end.
Yeah. So that's how I became a professional. And somewhere along the line, I decided, well, I needed to finish up my degree, and I just wrapped up my liberal arts degree, did some computer science courses. But that's kind of the long answer to your short question about my first quote unquote job.
Okay. So let's fast forward then. So could you tell us what it is you currently do at GitLab now?
Yeah, so at GitLab now, I am a product manager, specifically responsible for the runner, which is the agent that sort of is the engine that makes the CI, continuous integration of GitLab works, where it actually executes the CI jobs. And so I have this title, product manager. And for folks that are in the industry or folks coming into the industry, there are different definitions of what that means. But basically at GitLab, it's the person that's responsible for that product, in this case, the runner. So I'm a product manager here at GitLab. And you're probably going to ask me, well, product manager, let's say I've been doing product management since about 2007, 2008.
So as a product manager, what are some of your responsibilities then? Who do you interact with on a day-to-day basis, and how does it relate to the end product that our consumers ultimately use?
Yeah, so on a day-to-day basis, just before this call, for example, I had an hour-long conversation with an existing GitLab customer, a large enterprise. And so day-to-day interactions, you may have a conversation with a customer. In this case, the conversation with the customer and the sales team that supports the customers. Hey, we're using GitLab at scale. In this case, at scale being, if I recall correctly, over 1,600 users, quite a number of projects, right? And how do you actually use the product effectively? How do you deploy it? So that was one conversation I had today. And so that conversation, so that's in terms of how that influences or how that is part of my role, the tactical result from that conversation would be, hey, I'm going to reach back out to that customer and give them some very specific guidance in terms of best practices. Hey, we think you might want to configure your platform this way. But part of the results of that conversation will inform probably things we may need to do on the product side. So some of the challenges you're having in terms of figuring out the security setup for like how many different groups that they have and how these groups have to do certain software development processes, that's probably going to inform potential new features in the product as well.
Right.
Other conversations that you have on a day-by-day basis, I had a conversation this morning with a designer for GitLab Runner. And the conversation was about a new feature that we're adding into the UI. And so how does this new feature going to work? How are customers going to interact with it? Are we making the right decisions? And so the end result of those decisions will actually show up in the end product in a couple of releases. As a user, you will see this new feature in the end product. It's just like a smattering of some of the kind of conversations that one might have.
So you almost act as like a medium between the customer and GitLab in terms of how to best use the product and then how to convey back to GitLab what it is our customers are actually asking for and what we as a company need to do to make our features better for our clients?
I think that's a great way to put it. And then specifically at GitLab, and I'm going to do a really bad job of summarizing the GitLab handbook for product management right now. So excuse me right up. Right. But what I like about GitLab, again, bad summarization because it's really well written in the handbook. GitLab is very prescriptive and has a very well-defined sort of requirements and expectations for what a product manager does or is responsible for. And GitLab, as you know, sure, if we use the term DRI or directly responsible individual, I think, right? And so at GitLab, we expect product managers to own their product, right? You are responsible for prioritizing the right features that gets built, right? You're responsible for having the conversations with customers and dealing with customer escalations. You're responsible for ensuring that the continued growth in terms of users for your particular sliver of the product, in my case, the runner. Are you making, is Darren making the right decisions to ensure that we're seeing user growth, right, on a month-over-month and quarter-over-quarter basis? So you have a lot of responsibilities as a product manager at GitLab.
Right. Yeah, awesome. So let's take a step back too. So you were a CS major, right? So a lot of your responsibility was sort of dealing with code. What made you choose this particular career path of now moving and becoming a product manager as opposed to someone who just writes code every day?
Oh gosh, it's a great question. I always think, and that's the thing about careers, and then I was my kids ask me the same question. I think, right, if you choose, like for example, if you choose to be like a pre-med major and you choose to go down the path of becoming an adult, it's kind of a very set career path, right? It's like, hey, you're gonna go pre-med, you might go become a pediatrician, or you might become a surgeon, kind of preordained. For me, it was kind of not as defined. When I was initially in computer science, and even later on when I was taking additional computer science class, I love, for me personally, it's just me personally, I love knowledge, and I love knowing how everything works. I love being able to write code. I love being able to understand how computer chips work and all that, and that sort of thing. But personally speaking, I hate debugging code. To this day, I hate sitting here, right, knowing that if this code doesn't work, and specifically when I was having to turn in homework, I'm not going to get a grade in this class, right? You're sitting there late at night and the code is not working, right? You have to debug the thing and make it work. Otherwise, what you're going to turn in is not going to be a grade. Personally speaking, I hated that, right? But I love knowing how everything works. I love figuring it out. So I knew very early on that I probably didn't want to write code day in for a living. I probably didn't want to have to be reliant on producing code at work in order to pay the bills. Right. It just so happens that for me personally, as I mentioned earlier, when I got the opportunity to go to Dell, it was more in a systems analyst project management role, right? I was testing embedded devices. I was testing computer chips to make sure they were Y2K compliant. I was creating the projects and managing the projects around that for my sort of areas. So basically, when I went to Dell, I was responsible for testing all of the embedded devices, right? And all of the systems that were responsible for designing Dell computers and servers and network gear at the time. And so then after successfully doing that, I got an opportunity at Dell to become a senior project manager. So I was like, oh yeah, I can do this, right? So I had a very strong and solid technical background, right? Because of my CS experience and my experience in my other roles at UT. And so I became a technical project manager, and I did that at Dell from say 2000 to 2008. And so I was a senior project manager working on various types of very intricate technology projects. But I knew I wanted to switch from being sort of inward looking and doing internal technology projects and working on products where folks were actually paying for the end result or working on services. So then roughly about 2007, I got an opportunity to work at Dell's portfolio management office. We were building at the time a new services business. And so basically got an opportunity to help build that services business at Dell. And then after working on that for a year, and that services business was very along the lines of high touch, white glove type of services, then I got an opportunity to become a product manager for one of Dell's acquisitions. Dell had, in addition to building a services business, we just started acquiring software companies. So I got my first taste of being a product manager for a consumer-facing software product, and I totally loved it. And so that's how I got into product management. Went back to the master's at UT in what's called technology commercialization. So it's kind of a one-year MBA, but very focused on how do you commercialize new technologies and bring them to market. And then also, try and create my own company as well. And so I think for me, I just realized that sort of product management realm of like being able to work on or conceptualize new products or services is kind of what really fit me best in terms of
right.
This really works for me.
Right, exactly. And all those things sort of made you very attractive to GitLab, right?
So I have to find out exactly why they actually chose me. Well, yeah, that's a great question. I would hope so. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, did GitLab reach out to you, or did you reach out to GitLab? What sort of brought you here?
Yeah. So I was working in Nike, and I moved to New York because my wife got a great role as an associate dean at a college here in New Jersey. So I was actually doing some contract work um, with JP Morgan Chase in Jersey City, and GitLab reached out. And I was like, okay, let me check it out. And so GitLab reached out, and what attracted me beyond GitLab simply reaching out and beyond simply getting an offer for a full-time role that was fully remote was the culture and being able again to actually work on a product that's actually consumed by users, by a broad community. Right. I hadn't worked on a product of sort of this scale in terms of having an engaged community before. Like my last set of products at Dell, for example, were used by large enterprises, kind of more your traditional sort of like B2C type of sales motion. So this was like really super like, wow, this is interesting. Working on an open core product, large, very interesting community of users. And so yeah, so GitLab reached out, and that's kind of what kind of tickled my interest.
Nice. And how long have you been with GitLab now?
So just over a year and a few months. I came here in September of 2019. So
okay. And how has GitLab made you sharper since you've gotten into this role? What have you picked up since joining GitLab, if anything?
Tons of things, actually. At a high level, one, even though when I was at Dell, because at Dell, actually, I was working remote for quite a few years, because I moved to Oregon in about 2011, and I was managing my products remotely in Oregon. But that sort of remote experience was different because Dell as a company, and even when I moved to Nike later on, didn't necessarily have a remote muscle. Like at Nike, for example, we have one day where everybody would stay remote, but we didn't have the muscle to, and you can see the difference, right? Like some folks would be remote and you would be in the office, and then the whole, blue jeans, we're using blue jeans, the whole conferencing thing would never work. Mm-hmm. So what I've learned at GitLab, is just how you actually work in a fully remote way, right? In a very mature way, remote. And some of these processes you take for granted. But actually having them written down is very, very helpful. Okay, this is how you do it. You show up to meetings on time. You have an agenda that's written down. You follow the agenda, right? A lot of those things I hadn't really been exposed to before because of the experiences of other companies where that remote muscle wasn't there. So that's one. And the product management framework I GitLab, in terms of continuously challenging us to reach to interview customers and to do research and to get feedback and to be the DRI. That's also been a learning experience, right? Because you realize that, this is interesting. I have to own this. I have to engage on this in a very visceral way. I have to be present if I'm going to be successful and if my product is going to be successful. So I've learned quite a lot. I continue to learn. And then thirdly, the GitLab product is interesting. So for example, and I say interesting, I'll give you a very maybe hopefully an example that folks can grasp. If you're the product manager for say like an Instagram, it's kind of like very clear what that product is, right? It's like, oh, Instagram, right? You know what, you kind of know what the features are, right? You're sharing photos and you're doing all these cool things, right? But GitLab, we are different in that our product supports a whole plethora of different things, right? We could be supporting a team that's developing Instagram, or we could be supporting a team that's developing whatever, right? And so it's a really, really, if you love technology and you love software and you love learning, it gives you this opportunity to kind of like play in all these different spaces, right? Because we're a platform, we're a DevOps platform, which means we support theoretically anything out there in the ether.
Right.
That's super interesting.
So how do you see this industry transforming over the next few years?
Software or the product role?
Both. It could be both, or any particular thing that just comes to mind, whether it's DevOps or your particular product, right?
I think everything continues to evolve. I think at a high level, sort of like a broad level, we're all talking, obviously everyone's talking about it for months now, and we're all using it, like AI, machine learning, all those things. Mm-hmm. I think there are a couple of potential truisms that we can state without stating something that's obviously going to be proven wrong very quickly thereafter. I think one thing we can state is that there will always be new technologies and there'll always be evolution. There is, since I've been in computers and technology since late 80s, which again is giving away my age now, right? And if you look back even to the history of computing, right, I think we can all agree that there's been continuous evolution. There is not yet the nirvana, right? We've not yet gotten to the matrix where, oh, the computer just work.
Right.
Right. So there'll always be continuous evolution. So if you really enjoy like learning and computer science and programming, right, it's always going to evolve. I think that's one truism. My gut feel in terms of my second sort of forecast is that I believe that there will continue to be more competition now globally in terms of the folks that have skill sets in this arena versus maybe 30 years ago, right? And the access to those skills, right? China, India, African continent, you name it, Eastern Europe, Brazil, South America, Central America, Caribbean, folks all over the globe that now have access to technology, have access to learning. And so I think that's also coming into tourism. So I think if you are in this technology industry, what I think will help you long term, maybe I'm not answering the question by going off on a tangent, is when I was at Motorola, this vice president at the time, this was 1998, and he happened to be African American. And then I remember I walked into the office and we were having some changes and reductions in force. And he says, at this, he looked at me with he had a very thick accent. I forget where he was from, maybe West Africa or something. And he looked at me and says, in these times, you sharpen your saw. I was like, what does that mean? You sharpen your saw. I internalized it for a bit. I was like, yeah, he was right. And so I think the other truism is, if you love what you do, and especially in technology, just continue to learn, right? And it's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Some folks are going to be entrepreneurs and maybe get like something happens really, really fast and they're super successful. But for a bunch of us, it's just, hey, it's just continue to learn and be there, because there's going to be a lot of competition, but there's also going to be a lot of evolution as well.
Right, exactly. And that actually, you answered the next question I was going to ask partially, but let's see if you have anything else. What advice would you give to the students who are currently watching this?
It's a journey, and it's a journey. And I think if a couple of things is, if you are passionate about whatever you do, and I know this sounds kind of really corny, right? And things will happen in your career. Some things will work out well, and some things work, and you're going to have great leaders, and you're going to have bad leaders. You're going to have good experiences. You're going to have bad experiences. It's just a matter of life, right? But I think, generally speaking, if you love what you do, and you continue to learn, and you not every day is going to be like, my greatest productive day, right? But generally speaking, right, you do the right things for the right reasons. Over time, things are going to work out for you. Right? It may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but generally speaking, the arc of the universe will bend in your favor. Right? But if you're like, I'm not going to learn anything new, I just graduated college and now I know everything, I'm not going to continue my skills, I'm not going to mentor, I'm not going to, continue to like learn what's happening differently, or you know what I mean? Yeah. Then so I think that the arc will work out for you if those things are true.
Absolutely. So if you could go back and give your 21-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Gosh, go to Dell earlier. I had an opportunity to go to Dell when I was 31 years old, and I would not be sitting here right now if I had
it. Hey.
Somewhat, but maybe just buckle down and finish the CS degree faster. And now I look back, I have so many hours. I stayed, my wife did. It's like I looked at my transcript from another university I went to after I finished my liberal arts degree at UT. I did not finish my CS degree at UT. I was like, I didn't get my CS degree. Something was been bugging me. I had only 15 hours left. And I was like, why did I leave that? Why did I stop? So my advice to my younger self would be, you're having a great time working and you're having a great time hanging out, but maybe you just kind of focus a little bit and just knock that thing out because it was just 15 hours and just get it off the plate and it's done.
Nice.
So that's one piece of advice I'll give my young self. But also, truly, honestly, go take the Dell job in 1991. That was not a smart move.
Great. Well, Darren, that's all the questions that I have for you. Appreciate the time that you've given. This has been really insightful, and thanks for participating. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave?
No. Yeah. Again, it's a journey. It's not going to be perfect. Life is not perfect, but just hang in there and always continue to when you're in the workforce, give of yourself to your teammates. Try to help your teammates be better, and long term, again, things will work out.
All right. Well, thank you very much, my friend. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was a great. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.